All right, so you want to know about Ragnarok Online?
Yeah.
More specifically, the conflict between the Sapha and the Laphine. Huh. Looks like you got some pretty in-depth sources there.
You've really done your homework.
I try. Well, today we're going to try to untangle this whole conflict.
Yeah.
And figure out how it even got started in the first place.
Okay.
What do you say? Ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's do it. I think what makes this conflict so fascinating is the mystery surrounding it. We've got these two races, the Sapha and Laphine.
Right.
And they just seem to be on this collision course.
Yeah,
But the reasons for all this animosity, they're not exactly clear-cut.
totally. I think to get to the bottom of this,
Yeah.
we need to go beyond just like who these races are.
Right.
We need to look at
Okay.
their history, the world they live in. It's almost like a detective novel, you know?
Oh, I like it.
Got to look at every little detail.
Every clue.
Exactly.
So why don't we start with the backdrop then? Ragnarok Online. I mean, it takes place in this world that was completely reshaped by this cataclysmic event called, aptly named, Ragnarok. And this event, it not only redefined the entire landscape, but also the power dynamics between gods, demons, and humans.
All right. So
Yeah.
fast forward to the present day.
Okay.
We've got the Sapha living in Jotunheim, this land of
Yeah.
ice and harsh beauty.
It's beautiful in its own way, but it's definitely harsh.
Right. Yeah. And what's really interesting about them is they're not immortal,
Right.
but they have these incredibly long lifespans.
Like, think centuries.
Yeah. Can you imagine the stories?
Oh, the stories they could tell.
They could tell. I mean, come on.
There's a catch, though.
What's that?
There's always a catch.
Right.
The Sapha, they suffer from this, kind of unique affliction.
Oh.
It slowly, and I mean slowly, turns them to stone.
Whoa.
It's not a quick death or anything.
Right.
But this ever-present threat of petrification, it really shapes their entire culture.
I can see how that would.
Oh, yeah.
And that brings us to Bradium, right? This is where it comes into play.
Exactly. It's not just some valuable ore.
Yeah.
It's essential to their survival.
Yeah.
Radium actually slows down the petrification process, so you can understand why they would go to such great lengths to mine it.
Totally. Now let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about the Laphine.
All right.
They live in Alfheim.
Very different.
Polar opposite, right?
Yeah.
We're talking lush forest, vibrant life, and they've got this deep connection to Yggdrasil, the world tree.
Yeah, and Yggdrasil, I mean, it's not just some big tree.
Right.
It's the source of magic for their whole world.
Oh, wow.
And the Laphine are tasked with protecting it. So they're like guardians
Okay.
of this mystical energy source.
So we've got these two very distinct races
Yeah.
living in vastly different environments.
Yeah.
So how do they come into conflict?
How do they clash?
This is where it gets interesting.
It does.
Seems that the Laphine actually launched an attack on a Sapha mining operation
They did.
near a place called Minuk.
Right, and Minurk is very important strategically. I mean, it's in Jotunheim and most likely rich in the bradium that the Sapha are so desperate for.
And from what I can tell from these sources, it seems that the Laphine, they didn't really hold back.
No, not at all. Sources suggest that they killed at least one Sapha, maybe more.
Wow.
And they captured another one.
It's a pretty bold move.
It is.
I mean, it's not just some random skirmish, right?
No.
There's got to be something more to it.
Absolutely. This is where the real mystery lies because the sources, they don't explicitly state why the Laphine took such drastic actions.
So it's like we're missing a piece of the puzzle.
A big piece.
All right, so where does this leave us? I mean, we need to figure out why the Laphine attacked.
We do. We need to understand their motivations.
Right, exactly. So let's get to it.
Let's dive in. Welcome back to our deep dive, into the heart of this conflict brewing in Ragnarok Online.
Yeah, last time we really laid the groundwork, right? We talked about the Sapha, their need for bradium, then the Laphine, and how they protect Yggdrasil.
Exactly. But the big question still remains. Why did the Laphine attack?
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher. The sources, well, they don't give us a lot to work with.
Right, very tight-lipped about the Laphine's motives.
But gotta be a reason.
Oh, there's definitely a reason. We know the Laphine, they have this very unique relationship with Yggdrasil, this massive world tree that kind of connects everything, right? It fuels the world's magic.
Yeah, and it's more than just a duty to them. It's like deeply woven into their very existence. Right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. That reminds me, I was looking back at the sources, and there was something about how the Laphine perceives time It's not linear like ours, but cyclical.
Right, like the rings of a tree.
Yeah, echoing through generations.
And that's so important to remember.
Yeah.
Because their actions aren't just about, the immediate consequences, but how those actions ripple through time. What might seem like a minor disturbance to us
Right.
could be a catastrophe to them.
Okay, so let's apply that to the Sapha mining operation, right? Could the Laphine, maybe they see the extraction of this bradium
Yeah.
as a threat to Yggdrasil, like a poison, slowly harming the world tree?
That is a very insightful connection.
Really?
It's entirely possible they see the mining as disrupting this delicate balance, this magical flow that keeps Yggdrasil healthy, And remember, they're thinking long term, like centuries, millennia even.
Whoa, okay, so we're not just talking about resources. We're talking about two totally different ways of seeing the world, two different timelines clashing.
Exact, two different timelines.
But this has been bugging me. If they felt so strongly about this, why not try talking it out? Like, why not try diplomacy? Why go straight to an attack?
That's where we need to be careful about the sources we have.
Okay.
They're only fragments of a much larger story.
Right.
It's entirely possible that there were attempts at communication that just failed. Or maybe they just haven't been revealed yet.
Or maybe there are these cultural barriers that we just don't know about, like language differences or just different ways of expressing concern.
Imagine trying to explain
Yeah.
the concept of a world sustaining free to a race that's just focused on survival.
Right. Just trying not to turn to stone.
The very foundation of their understanding would be different.
And even with the best intentions, things can get misinterpreted.
Oh, for sure.
Right. A plea from the Laphine could be seen as a threat by the Sapha.
Absolutely. Just escalating things further.
Okay, so we've got this clash of cultures, miscommunication. But could there be something else going on? Something even bigger?
Like what?
Well, we talked about external forces before, right? Other players in this world?
Oh, yeah, good point. Ragnarok Online, it's not just about these two races, right? We've got gods, demons, all these organizations.
Right, with their own agendas.
Exactly.
Right.
It's very possible that someone or something is manipulating events.
Okay, yeah, like a puppet master pulling strings.
Think about all that drama with the Azer and Vanir factions.
Right, or even like those assassin guilds, always lurking in the shadows.
Always trying to maintain that balance of power.
Exactly.
It's definitely possible.
So we've got this web of possibilities. Cultural misunderstandings, desperation for survival, maybe even some external forces messing things up.
It's a lot to unravel.
I know, right? I almost feel like the sources are like teasing us.
They are. They're definitely leaving us with more questions than answers.
But isn't that what makes it fun? It lets us come up with our own theories.
It's like we're players in the game ourselves trying to solve this mystery.
I kind of want to jump back in and see these places for myself, Talk to some of those NPCs, maybe pick up on some extra clues.
You should. Sometimes the best way to understand a conflict is to see it firsthand.
Oh, but before you go running off to log in, we've got one more piece of this deep dive to get through.
What's that?
Well, we've talked about why the attack happened, but what about what happens next?
Oh, good point. What are the consequences of all this?
And how does this affect the rest of the world? That's what we'll be looking at in part 3.
All right, then, let's get to it.
Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into the Sapha and Laphine conflict.
It's been fascinating.
I know, right? We've covered so much ground. We talked about their past, those totally different worldviews,
Right, so different.
and even the possibility of someone else, something else, pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Right, like a puppet master.
Exactly. But now we need to talk about the big picture,
Okay, yeah,
the what ifs of it all.
the consequences.
Right. What happens next?
We've talked about the causes, but now we have to ask ourselves, what are the possible outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, imagine this conflict. It gets out of control, right? Just keeps escalating.
And we've got the Sapha desperate for bradium to, just survive.
Right. And the Laphine protecting Yggdrasil, maybe even seeing the mining as a threat to the tree's very existence.
It's a recipe for disaster.
So what's the worst that could happen?
Well, for the Sapha, a full-blown war that could completely disrupt their bradium mining operation.
I mean, it's not just about their survival, right? It's the whole race.
Exactly, their entire race.
Yeah.
A shortage of bradium that could lead to all sorts of problems, panic, social unrest. They might even start fighting amongst themselves.
Now, on the Laphine side, if they really think that Yggdrasil's in danger.
I mean, if they see the mining as harming the world tree,
Yeah.
we could be talking about a total ecological disaster. Because Yggdrasil, it's not just some tree, it's the source of magic for the entire world.
So if it's weakened,
I mean, just think about it. Natural disasters, disruptions in magic, whole ecosystems collapsing, monsters running wild.
Okay, hold on. This is getting a little scary, even for Ragnarok.
I know, right? But don't forget, this is Ragnarok Online we're talking about. A world where players, adventurers, they're not just watching this all happen, they're part of it.
Right, they can actually do something.
Exactly. Maybe even hold the key to resolving this whole conflict.
Or at least making sure it doesn't destroy everything.
Right. I mean, imagine adventurers acting as mediators, traveling back and forth between Jotunheim and Alfheim.
Okay, yeah.
Trying to understand both sides of the story.
Okay.
Maybe even uncover some hidden truth that could lead to peace.
Okay, so that's our quest.
That's the mission.
I like it. Players forming alliances, gathering information, maybe even going on these dangerous missions to protect stuff.
Protecting those key locations.
Yeah, or resources so they don't get destroyed.
It's a race against time.
And who knows, maybe some hero will step up, right? Some awesome alchemist who figures out how to make bradium.
So they don't have to mine it anymore.
Exactly. Or a super powerful mage who can heal Yggdrasil.
Yeah, like a magical tree doctor.
I like it. So many possibilities. This just shows that even in Ragnarok Online, even when things look bad, players can make a difference.
It's a dynamic world. Player actions have real consequences.
It's not just about leveling up, it's about shaping the world.
Exactly.
So, for all of you listening out there, what do you think is the most important thing to remember?
I think it's the importance of perspective, The Sapha and the Laphine, they might have different views, but they're both fighting for what they believe in. They're fighting for survival.
It reminds us that things aren't always black and white.
Right. There are shades of gray.
So players, this is a call to action. Don't just sit there, go out there and explore, investigate.
Get involved.
You might be the key to peace, or at least discover some truth that can change things.
That's what makes Ragnarok Online so exciting. It's a living world.
And we've come to the end of our deep dive, but this story doesn't end here.
No, the conflict between the Sapha and the Laphine, it's still unfolding.
So it's up to players like you to decide how it all plays out.
The fate of Ragnarok Online rests in your hands.
So get out there, explore Jotunheim, those icy plains, and Alfheim, those mystical forests.
Be the hero.
Good luck out there, adventurers.